Welcome to iPen Podcast, Interviews and Conversations. Here we bring entrepreneurs and their business to their audience and communities as well as ours. We welcome and connect with them to share who they are and what they do. Authors, entrepreneurs, we extend the invitation to promote your business here on our podcast and in iPen Magazine. Your article, your story, your promotions, how you can connect with others, a new audience, a quarterly magazine presented online for all to view and subscribe to. For articles, ads, and subscriptions, please contact ipendesigns@gmail.com. For your viewing, you can see past articles, past interviews on www.nanettembuchanan.com. Welcome to the show. Good evening, good evening, good evening. I'm Nanette Buchanan, and this is iPen Podcast, Interviews and Conversations. I want to welcome the audience. I want to welcome everybody to our platform where we learn about entrepreneurs. We talk to new entrepreneurs, old entrepreneurs, those that want to share their journey. I think it's kind of important that we know that not everyone wakes up rich the next morning when they decide to start a business. It doesn't happen overnight. So there is a journey involved, no matter who you think it is. There's a journey that they go through, and we want to share with you those journeys and give you some encouragement, because not everything works at one time, but it all works for the better. So we want to make sure that we invite you into our forum to show you a little bit about that. If you're interested in being on the show, you can contact my email address, ipendesigns@gmail.com, and we will schedule you, because we're looking for the next group to come on in. We also release our magazine, as the commercial said, every 3 months, and July's issue is getting ready to pop off. So we want to make sure that you guys subscribe to the YouTube channel as well as on my website for the magazine. So without further ado, I want to welcome to the stage my partner in crime. We're building a business just like everybody else. We're working one step at a time to be better in what we do. And Felice is one of those that pushes me. She doesn't push me over, but she does push, to make sure that I'm staying on top of things, because I'm one of those that might say, hey, not today. And she says, no, don't wait until tomorrow. Make sure you do it today. So I appreciate her, and I appreciate her little nudges and her little pushes and her reminders. Hey, go back and do that again because you did it the wrong way. So I understand. She is my backbone. Felice, come on and join in. We got fun today. We got fun. Oh, wait a minute. We got fun today.
Push
so
the button,
come on
and
in. Join us. How you doing? Push the button. How are you, my dear?
I dare say that I'll tell you, no, do it again because you did it right. Do that again.
Do that again. Do it the right
Sometimes.
way. Get it right. Get it right. 2 times right. At least. So how is it in good old Texas? How's everything going on down there?
I'm still in Georgia. Yeah, I don't know.
You're still in Georgia. Okay.
I am.
Well, that's good. That's good. Yeah. If you're still in Georgia, that's all right. Mm-hmm. Well, you're not avoiding the heat, that's for sure, because the heat's got all of it.
So, it's been raining here a lot down here.
Yeah, we had the off and on storms too. And our guest is from North Carolina, so he knows it's been hot too. You know what it's been? It's been one of those summers where you go, I want to go, never mind. I want to do this. Never mind.
Can you believe it is June the 30th?
And it's still right, and it's hot. We haven't even gotten to July and August.
That month is evaporated in all the heat, I guess.
In all the heat. You're right.
But I'm super excited to be here tonight. And once again, you've done it. You've done it again. You brought us a fantastic guest. And
not only that, did you get it from his bio? When I read the bio, the first thing I said was a Stephen Van Patten protege. You know, he's into
Yes.
the sci-fi and
Yes.
all of that stuff that you go, I don't know. I don't know if I want to know about all of that. But the thing is that it has been a different type of wave.
Yeah.
And every now and then I find myself on that wave. So I'm really interested in hearing, you know, and we can't even ask him that question that we asked Stephen because he's not that old.
Well,
So
you know what? And that's the other thing I want to commend you for.
yeah, he's not that old. He's a young
You
author.
know,
Yeah, a
but
young entrepreneur.
yes, yes,
Entrepreneur.
and I
But,
appreciate that. I
well, you know
appreciate it.
what?
Mm,
I think that people need to understand that it age is not on a business.
that's right.
You know,
That's
when
right.
you want to start something, you don't
Hmm.
have to be a
Yeah.
certain age to start it. You know,
Yes.
you have to be, it's in you. It's
Yes.
something that says you need to do this and
Right.
you pursue it. And I appreciate the fact that we've had our last show had a
Hmm.
young woman who started early, and now
Yes.
we have a young man that started early. So
Yes. And so I'm really interested to talk to him about that very thing. So
about that very thing. Well,
about that very
let's
thing.
find out who he is first.
Yeah.
Let's bring him to the stage. So everybody, welcome to the stage our guest, Brady Moore.
Hey.
Good evening, sir. Good
Hello.
evening.
Yay.
How's
Kudos to
everybody doing?
you. Kudos to you.
Hello.
And
Welcome to
we
our show.
yeah, welcome to our show. And we want to know all about you. So, the very first thing that we're going to get into and jump into quick, because you've got so much to unpack with this stuff
Mhm.
that you do. We want to make sure that we get into it. But what we do with all of our guests, because we don't want to do a disservice to them by trying to explain who they are, we're asking you, who is Brady Moore?
Brady Moore is a good old fashioned blurred black nerd from Charlotte, North Carolina.
Wait a minute. Stop.
Love
Stop.
that.
Did you say a
Blur.
blurred? A
Blurred.
blurred?
Yes,
Yeah,
because
A
that's
he
what
did.
it's called.
blurred. Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
Love it.
Yeah, born and
Okay.
raised in Charlotte, North Carolina. Proud graduate of University of North Carolina at Greensboro. And I started writing. Really, I've been making up stories all my life. It was really the writing part came around probably around right after high school.
Mm,
That's when I really got into wanting to be a writer, and it really just started off as a hobby. And I
mhm.
got my first professional start in the workforce just being a projectionist at a movie theater,
Oh.
and I got to
Mm.
watch a lot of movies, soak in a lot of movies, and I started off actually doing a movie blog.
Mhm,
And my older brother and I, we used to come up with stories when we were younger, and
mhm,
something said, "Hey, let's just try to see if this love for making stories can actually manifest into a book." And it just started
Hmm.
off as a hobby, and next thing I knew, I had a couple hundred pages, and I said, "Let's try to get this thing published."
very
Okay.
good. Well,
Okay.
congratulations to you. I
Thank
love
you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love the fact that you named yourself a blurred. I mean,
Blurred.
that is definitely different, but I understand it. I
Mhm,
understand it because a lot of times we don't even know that we're nerds. We
mhm,
we don't even know that we're doing something so
mhm,
different from all of our friends and
mhm,
so different from everyone else. It's
mhm,
just, outer being,
mhm,
and I don't know whether or not you came into play with that being a nerd, as you
mhm,
say, whether or not you came into being that and dealing with that type thing. What
mhm,
did your family say when you said you wanted to write?
My family, specifically my parents, have always been very nurturing to creativity. My mom was a school teacher,
mhm,
so she was always encouraging us to draw, and she would buy us notebooks and things like that to draw pictures and write down our story ideas. So
mhm,
that's something that was always encouraged.
mhm,
Never really felt like I couldn't, enjoy those things or felt
mhm.
pressured to not
Mhm.
uh, enjoy those things. I think being a nerd is kind of coming back in fashion as
Oh
far
yeah.
Yeah,
as
yeah.
especially within our community
Mhm,
because I think for a long time we were kind of put into a box when it came to what we could and couldn't create in
mhm.
certain
Mhm.
spaces. And now when you see people like Ryan Coogler creating, you know,
Yes.
incredible movies like Black Panther and
Mhm,
and centers and things like that, you see that there's um, a whole new avenue for Black creatives to kind of
Right.
enjoy those things that we really always were enjoying when we were younger.
Mhm.
We just didn't have this filter.
Right,
Uh-huh.
right,
So, do
right.
you consider yourself a blurred in the sense that you weren't athletic, more book, or just that you might? Do you feel that that blurred comes from? I don't want to say this word, but misfit, if you will.
Not at all. I think it's just it just it's how you well, it's what you enjoy. You know,
Sure.
you can be from any different walk of life, and you can be
Hmm.
into a lot of things. I'm really into sports. I played football
Hmm.
in middle school. Like I've always been
Hmm.
a huge sports fan,
Hmm.
and you know, growing up, you could be into a lot of different things, and I was always into anime. I was always into superheroes, and so
Hmm.
it's really just a matter of
Yeah.
embracing those things that you have always enjoyed. And
Hmm.
nowadays, you see people, going to conventions and dressing up in cosplay and things like
Right,
that, and
Hmm.
really just embracing
right.
that kind of inner
Sure.
child that
Yeah.
always enjoyed these things growing up.
Okay. Very good. I
And,
love it.
and and like you said, it's embracing what is normally put to the side as just a little, okay, they're into that, but we're going to leave it alone.
Yeah.
Because as you said, we could look at that with everything. I mean, in my era, we
Hmm.
embraced the cartoons. We had
Hmm.
cartoons, certain cartoons that you watched, and if kids
Hmm.
didn't watch that cartoon, they were considered corny.
Hmm.
Or if you watched a certain cartoon, you were considered a nerd because
Hmm.
that cartoon may have had more educational things
Hmm.
than the playful things.
Hmm.
So being a nerd could be, and when I was growing up, you were a nerd if you were just totally into the books. If you were
Hmm.
totally into
Yeah.
reading and
Yeah.
totally into researching, and you loved going to the library and you loved doing all of that kind of stuff, you definitely were a nerd.
Hmm.
You didn't want to go outside. You rather be, sitting somewhere reading a book. You were a nerd. So I understand that it's being embraced now.
Hmm.
Embracing what you like and embracing it regardless to what it
Right. Right.
is
And then
is
that's being a
is a
little.
new thing.
That's being a little polite, or because back in our day, it was karate movies, right? with the
Yes,
bad,
yes,
with the
yes.
with the bad voiceovers, right? So,
No, the delayed voiceovers.
well, yeah,
Remember they spoke and then the voice came.
yeah,
But the thing is, you would run in the house and look at certain things because of the fact that it was there. But as Brady has said, hey, I like sports. I like this. I like no nerd would
I
yeah,
think
ever.
that's why it's really important to create those avenues so that people understand
Mm-hmm.
it's okay to enjoy a lot of different things. I had the
Mm-hmm.
opportunity. My wife was a teacher, was a high school teacher, and I had the opportunity to teach to come and talk to her class, and there were a lot of kids who I never would have thought would be interested in reading a book like Clairvoyance,
Mm-hmm.
like my novels. And but every specifically the Black boys were all completely locked in and tuned in and excited to hear what I had to
Mm-hmm.
say, excited about the book. And it took me back to when I was in school and we never had those types of avenues, so we couldn't it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
cool because it didn't exist. When
right,
you
there you
have
go.
more movies with black centric characters and at the forefront specifically, and when
Hmm.
you have different cartoons and different movies and different books, you
Yeah,
create an avenue for kids to enjoy it without feeling like they can't.
yeah. Now, that brings up another question, but I'm gonna table that for later. But so you said you really started developing your writing after high school. So then, what was your college career like? And would you go for there? Um,
Yeah, so I majored in media studies. So I originally went to be in sports broadcasting, and
oh,
then I realized I didn't really like being on camera that often.
hmm.
And I liked more of the technical behind the scenes,
Yeah.
and so I also did a lot of film classes in
Hmm.
college. I did some film editing. I
Hmm.
did some short film editing and
Hmm.
some script writing as well. So studied the film and the TV aspect. I
Yeah.
also did radio and had my own radio show for a while as well. So I kind of touched every aspect of media
Okay,
before I
gotcha.
kind of ventured towards the writing aspect. But I've always been a good writer. I've always been the type of person that I'd much rather have a written exam than the multiple choice. But that's just because it's easier for me to explain what I mean than trying to
Yeah.
pick out a choice that I might not
Yeah,
necessarily be.
one thing or another.
Well, that's truly a gift because I struggle
So
with that. You know, my thoughts are all in my head, and then when I start to try to write them down, it's like, yeah, but I go off on these tangents trying to explain without trying my thought as opposed to the whole subject. So, anyways, kudos to you. I'm glad someone has the gift of writing and making it understandable.
So you were talking about comics and you being the author of sci-fi and fantasy and being the writer. Do you also illustrate?
I do not illustrate, but I did grow up loving to draw. Like I
Mm-hmm.
still have a bunch of drawings from when I was in middle school and high school. Um, it was kind of a talent that I kind of just let go away, just because, like we
Mm-hmm.
talked about, it wasn't something that was I felt like I could turn into a career, so I kind of let it go by the wayside.
Hmm.
Um, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a lot of talented artists, and specifically with my book covers, I prefer their art to mine anyway. So I
Right.
definitely
Okay.
love
Okay.
love to draw and love the art aspect of science fiction, but I
Hmm.
leave the
Mm-hmm.
illustrating to the true professionals.
Awesome.
Okay.
Awesome. Awesome.
Now, when you do the okay, I guess my question is in relationship to the comics and as well as you being sci-fi and dealing with comics and sci-fi, what I know the storyline stays the same pretty much. But when you're doing that artistic attachment, does it bring out more in your writing? Or do you see it as just a visual of your writing?
I think when it comes to comics, because I'm not a comic artist, I think comics do a great job of storytelling through the pictures.
Hmm.
When
Mm-hmm.
it comes to writing novels, for me, it was more of a cinematic aspect to it because I grew up watching a lot of different movies, and so that
Mm-hmm.
was kind of the aspect that I infused into my writing. But I've
Mm-hmm.
always enjoyed comics. I grew up on Batman, X-Men comics are always my
Right.
favorite, and
Right.
so with with comics, you're able to kind of create this world, and with
Mm-hmm.
comics, the world building is kind of what makes it so unique and so special. Is you're able to kind of create this environment that you couldn't see in real life, and you can
Hmm.
do things on a page that you can't. That's harder to do when it comes to other aspects of media like TV, and you can do it with movies, but you have to have a gigantic budget. So
Mm-hmm.
comics allow specifically artists to really tap into worlds that you
Mm-hmm.
couldn't really get to without having a lot of money to tap into.
Right.
And you know it's strange. I didn't. I mean, I may still be wrong in it, but the way my mind works, and excuse my mind for working the way it works, but the way my mind works, I always see, and you'll understand this because you do uh, photography. I mean, not photography, but you do movies and you do movie reels. And now people want us to do trailers for our books and they want us to show different things. However, it always amazed me that before you can do a movie in completion, you have to do a storyboard. And to me, a storyboard is a comic.
Exactly what it
It
is.
looks just
Yeah.
like it looks just like a comic. You know,
Hmm.
you have to create the comic
Hmm.
before you can put it on film and
Yeah.
before you can put it even into your into your script. When you have the script reads and everything else, a lot of times they're reading with the storyboard in front of them.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I've always wondered as a writer, because I'm like you, I don't write comics. I write the regular stories. So if I'm writing a regular story, am I actually in tune with the visual? So when
Hmm.
you're writing these clairvoyant pictures and stuff,
Hmm.
this all of this stuff that you're writing, you got these pictures in your head.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I used to, when I was younger, I used to draw comics in class all the time. I used to get in trouble all the time for making comic books in class,
Hmm.
and you have to have that kind of imaginative capacity,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
especially when you're doing science fiction, because one of the aspects about my books that I enjoy doing the most is creating these rules to these superpowers that these characters have. Because one thing to just create a character who can fly or who can,
Mm-hmm.
read minds and do things like that. You have
Mm-hmm.
to create you kind of have to create your own rules and regulations to these
Yeah.
gifts. Otherwise, you're going to run into issues with your story where you're going to have plot
Mm-hmm.
holes, you're going to have things that aren't going to tie together. So you have to be able to really create your own. That's where the science fiction aspect comes in. You have to be able to create your own environment and
Mm-hmm.
your own rules and regulations for what these characters can and can't do. And that
Mm-hmm.
it's actually just fun to kind of create the story from that. Because
Yeah.
for me, I came up with the concept for clairvoyance and the main character Ryan and this teenager who's kind of trying to figure out who he wants to be and what he wants to do with his life. That story kind of blossomed from the idea of having these characters with these different superpowers.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And once you're able to come up with the powers and what they can and can't do, then the story kind of evolves from there. And you
Yeah.
kind of are able to create the adventures and the challenges that the characters have
Mm-hmm.
um, from that original concept.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's awesome. So so tell us about your first book. Did you say it's clairvoyant?
Mhm.
Was that your first one? Okay, that's your first book. And you decided to publish, but you know, oh, and you have a trilogy, so now there's three, or have the other two been written?
So the second one is actually releasing July 8th, and then the
Oh,
third one
nice.
will be out later on this year.
Congratulations. Okay, so tell us. So you ended up with, you said three or 100 pages or so, and then you decided, oh, let's get a book. So tell us about that journey and what it's like for you for the first book, when you first held it in your hands. What did you do? How'd you celebrate? All of that good stuff.
So my wife was actually the driving force for me actually getting it published.
Mhm.
Um, she read it, she thought it was great. My family read it, they thought it was great, and so they kind of pushed me to do more with it and not just sit on it. And so I found an agent first, which was a long process that took about a year.
Yeah.
Took a lot of rejection letters and
Mhm.
revising the manuscript and things like that. But you have to be willing to go through
Yeah.
constructive criticism and go through the ups and downs before you can get to the right, get to the right path that you're supposed to be on. And
Mhm.
really for me, the most exciting thing is actually meeting people when I go to book events or book
Mhm.
signings who I've never met before, who are
Yeah.
just so excited to talk about the characters. When I got
Right.
the chance to speak at my wife's school, there was a
Mhm.
student at the school who wasn't even in her class, and the book was actually in their school library. And
Mhm.
the student realized that she was my wife, and so students sat in on when I was talking to the class, and
Mhm.
afterwards we just chopped it up, and they told me their favorite characters, and it was just really
Oh.
cool to have someone as passionate about something you created as you are, and
Yeah.
the most enjoyable part about it. So, my wife jokes or gets on me all the time when I'm joking, and I say that like, I'm happy that I wrote them, but after I write them, I'm on to the next project.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
when I do these events and when I come and talk about the books or when I meet people, that's when that joy of getting it published really comes back because it was fun creating this story. I would love the
Mhm.
books even if no one ever read them because they're
Right.
cool to have that creation that
Mhm.
have something that was in your head now
Mhm.
tangible.
Yeah.
But being able to share in those experiences and have someone enjoy something that you created is an unbelievable feeling, and that's probably the best part of being an author.
Hmm. And I think you said something really important that all of our listeners need to attach onto, especially if you want to be the author and publish your works, or maybe even if you don't, but you go down that path. So you shared your story with your family. Your family loved it. Um, and however, that was enough to get you to the next level and understanding the next level in that, right? Because
Mhm.
I'm pursuing these things, but yes, your wife is a school teacher, as you said, but she's not a published a publisher. right? So there's a different take on that. Your family loves it, it's great. They think, wow, they see the talent, the raw talent, but it needs to be honed for the
Hmm.
public, right? And that's a different take on it. So if you hadn't done that second process of finding the agent and getting the revisions and taking in the input, you may not have had that student to receive your work like it's received, and really enjoy it because it's been honed in instead of through the eyes of your family that love you, and you like, yeah, this
Right.
is great, just publish it. But you might have had, it might not have been formatted in the correct way or whatever, for those kind of things. So I think that's really important, and thank you for sharing that part, because again, we in this digital age is, just do it all on your own, and you know
Yeah.
like
And
back in the
that's
day.
kind of how I knew that my agent was right for me, because
Hmm.
the feedback that she gave me
Hmm.
was the first time I'd gotten feedback, and I agreed with it 100%. Like, it
Nice.
wasn't, it was changes, but I felt like the changes that were suggested actually made the story better. And
Yeah.
so you have to be able to kind of weed out who's kind of just trying to change something to their
Yeah.
vision, and who
Yeah.
sees your vision and wants to bring it to life and
And
improve
you
it.
and you're absolutely right, because you're right at the process, and I've said it for the last couple of years that the independent artist, the independent author is on a rise.
Hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
when you know 20 some odd years ago, or wait a minute, let me think, how many years has it been?
So let's go
When
with
I
20 then. Let's just
Yeah,
go with
let's go with 20 years ago or whatever. When I did my first book, I went through and my second book and my third book. I went through the process of sending out those query letters, and like you said, you don't even get an answer.
20. Hmm.
You don't, it's not so much that you're anticipating the fact of what they're going to say about making changes. It's just the fact that you we didn't even get answers. You're sending out envelope after envelope after envelope, and then you're wondering, is the letter right? Am I addressing the letter to the right person, and am
Hmm.
I formatting the letter correctly? Am I
Right.
What am I doing that no one's not even acknowledging the fact that I wrote them a letter?
Yeah.
No, they weren't even answering. Then,
Hmm.
with the wave of independent artists and independent authors and self-published authors coming, and you notice how I use two different
Hmm.
identifiers for that, because at first it was, you're a self-published author, automatic thumbs down.
Hmm.
Self-published, we don't even want to touch you because you
Hmm.
know nothing. And then there was a wave of people that started saying, well, I'm not just self-published, I'm independent.
Hmm.
Well, when the change of the name came to independent artists, people started answering those query messages,
Hmm.
even if they just said, hey, you're not in the right forum, or you're not in the right person, or you don't have the right agent, because different agents handle different styles of writing and different genres. So they changed all of that. So you've come along during a time where now it's acceptable to be brand new.
Hmm.
It's acceptable not to know. It's acceptable not to be totally understanding
Hmm.
about the fact that a person is trying to get something done. And in
Hmm.
the meantime, those of us that have been doing it our way all of this time and struggling and kicking boots and turning rocks over and doing everything we got to do, we've now had to sit back and say, well, wait a minute. Now I got to go back and do what?
Hmm.
How do I get this done? So I appreciate the fact that things have opened up.
Hmm.
Evolution of everything evolves. So
Hmm.
I'm glad that it has evolved to
Hmm.
open up the eyes of some of the people in the industry to people such as yourself. And of course, it's books that turn into film, that turn into plays, that turn into other things. So the idea that there are more independents being able to see or be seen is amazing. That's an amazing thing, because when you get to the point where you've done so many books and you've done it your way so many times, you're now a little hardened towards someone telling you don't do it this way.
Right.
Because now you're looking at it saying, wait a minute, I've been doing it this way for X amount of time and it's
Hmm.
been working. Who are you? And you didn't answer I got the envelope right here. You didn't answer me the first time I contacted you.
And that's
You
probably
know?
one of the things I learned early on is you got to be flexible. You got to be willing to,
Yeah, you got to.
you
You
got to be
got
willing to
to.
adapt.
And you got to be where you're not dual minded. And I say that with reserve. I don't want the audience to think that you can't do two things at once. But I know for myself, my thing was always, well, if it don't make it, I still got a job. Well, if it doesn't,
Yeah, that part.
if it doesn't go through, I'm still employed.
Mhm, mhm.
Even though I was following what I considered at the
Mhm,
time, just putting my words out there for people to see.
mhm,
So to put it out there, I commend you. I commend
mhm,
you. I commend those that are in the field that have
mhm.
taken it on as a field.
Yeah.
If you're
Mhm,
looking at it from that perspective, I commend you because the fears that I had were total. Look, ain't nobody answering these envelopes. If I
mhm,
quit my job, I'm not I'm not gonna have any income. I can't. Nobody's even answering the envelope. And do
mhm,
I really want to take the chance of publishing
mhm.
another book and nobody's answering?
Yeah.
But what
Uh,
we have to learn is your audience. So what type audience? Now you already said you go to the school and you talk to the kids.
mhm.
But what type audience do you find, or what type audience has surprised you? I mean, we all know that mom and dad and wife and relatives are going to like the book. And now you found out that you have an audience with the youngers.
I think the teenage boys is probably the most surprising audience, not because I'm surprised that they enjoyed the book. I'm surprised that they have been so interested in reading the book, just because it was kind of taboo growing up. Once you kind of got out of middle school, that you don't read books anymore. And
Hmm.
I enjoyed reading when I was younger, but even I didn't love to like crack open, like go find a book and read it. It was all movies and TV. But when I go to these events and the kids read the back of the book and their eyes light up because they've never seen a character that looks like them on the front cover of a book like them.
Hmm.
That's the aspect of it that I didn't see happening so often and with such excitement. Going to different speaking engagements and having 16, 17-year-old black kids tell they can't wait to read your book. That's
Hmm.
because you're always going to have people who read books who are going to be excited
Right.
about reading books. People who are always looking for their next young adult fantasy or science fiction books.
Mhm,
I was a huge fan of the Maze Runner books and Hunger Games and
mhm,
things like
Hmm.
that. I love those books. And
mhm.
people who read those, I know that they're probably good at
Right.
reading clairvoyance.
Right.
It's the people who don't consider themselves readers, who
Mhm.
are excited to read the book. Those are the people that are always the most exciting
Yeah.
for me to get to connect with, and those are the ones that not necessarily surprise me, but always excite
Mhm.
me to see them
Hmm.
how enthused they are.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about that engagement a little bit because as you said that what triggered me was what was the vampire series for a long time.
Which one? There's a lot.
Yeah, which one, right?
Twilight.
Twilight, yes, Twilight. And so, you know, movie versus book reader, I think the um the movie got legs because somehow the book got into the audience hands first, and then this you know this wave caught on, and then the movies came out, which are blockbusters because again they had an audience base that wanted to see this book come to life, right? So how then do is there something that have a thought process or a path forward to ever see your books on the screen?
I would absolutely love to see clairvoyance become a movie. That's one of the
Mhm,
things that I've been told for people who've read the series, that when they were reading it, they can see it on a movie screen. And
mhm,
because I grew up with as a huge movie buff and I worked in a movie theater for a long time, that's
mhm,
definitely an inspiration
mhm,
um, for the series. I always pictured it as something that can be cinematic, and that's why I kind of stopped at three, because
mhm,
I always saw it as a trilogy, as a story that kind of has this beginning, middle, and end.
uh-huh,
Um, but I never felt like it was something that was a necessity for me to create. It would be
Uh-huh.
great if it became a movie. I'm always kind of striving for that next step.
Yeah.
But being able to just write and create it and go through the process, the ups and downs of creating just the first draft. Um,
Mm-hmm.
there's a pride that comes with that that I think is important to have regardless of how
Mm-hmm.
far it goes or if it becomes a movie or not, because there's a lot of kind of passion in just books
Yeah.
and being able to kind of have my stamp on it, because if it does become a movie, I'm not directing it and I'm not going to
Mhm.
star in it either. So once it
Yeah.
becomes a movie, that's cool, and I would definitely have influence over what goes into to making it and things
Mm-hmm.
of that nature, and it would be a dream come true to see it on the screen.
Yeah.
It's the books are specifically my creation, and
Yeah.
so there's a love that comes from just having the book series
Mm-hmm.
um, out for people to enjoy.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Love it.
And the thing about the transformation from book to movie and from all of it is a process. And the thing is that I know a lady that I met early on, and I'm glad that I did meet her early on in my writing journey, said to me, "You want to be a part of every part of the process."
Mm-hmm.
As an author, regardless to what's going on, regardless to what they're doing with your work, you want to be a part of the process. You want to know exactly, okay, what does it take to make this cover? No, I'm not making a cover, but I need to know how you make a cover. You know,
Mm-hmm.
no, I'm not doing the editing, but I need to know what's going on with the editing.
Right.
I don't do the formatting, but I need to know what goes on during the formatting. So the more that you do with your work, the more you have to involve yourself
Mm-hmm.
in the understanding of what's being done with your work.
Yeah.
So I just want to throw that out to not only you, but to the audience, those that are looking at, becoming authors and becoming everything else. One of the things that makes or breaks you as far as your spirit is losing sight of where your work could go.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mhm.
somebody could come back 20, 30 years from now and want to do clairvoyance.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be done today. It doesn't have to be done tomorrow. Somebody can come back 20 years from now and say, hey, hey, we know you're a grandfather now, but we, we want to
Right.
take that book you did when you was a young kid.
Mm-hmm.
We want to take that book and turn it into this. You still need to know what the process is, because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of us who are independent, a lot of us that are black, a lot of us that are young, get beat out of so much
Mm-hmm.
because in business we don't know the process.
Yeah.
We get beat out of the deals. We get beat out of, there's been people that have lost their manuscripts, people that have lost their books because they didn't copyright them.
Yeah.
People that have lost the royalties in the movies because they didn't know that if they put just a dime in, they were going to get 25 cents back. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? We have to know that we have to be involved in the process.
Yeah.
Just stay involved in the process.
Mm-hmm.
Don't, whatever it is, don't just say to somebody, yeah, you can take it. Okay, sign here. And you don't pay attention to what's going on with the process. And like
I've
you
I've I've seen movies that are adaptations of books where the
Mm-hmm.
movie's
said,
nothing like the book, and you can feel the difference. And
Yeah.
the
mhm.
last thing I want is for something to be created just for the sake of creation. I've never
And
Right.
been.
not only
Mm-hmm.
that,
Very
you
good.
you're not always sitting in on the creative side. I think one of the shocking things for me was the industry where you do greeting cards. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
poets do greeting cards. They send in their poems, and they're not involved in what goes on the outside of that greeting card. So
Mm-hmm.
there was a young lady who was protesting that she didn't make the images of the black fathers or the black sons during Father's Day one year, where the kid looked, he was like, yo, 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 dad. But the poem on the inside wasn't a yo, yo, yo poem. You know what I mean? So she
Mm-hmm.
felt some kind of way, and they simply told her,
Mm-hmm.
you're not on the Hallmark writing team. You're
Mm.
not a part of our
Wow.
writing
Mm.
team.
Yeah.
So you don't get to say this and you don't get to say that. But did she read the process?
Mm-hmm.
Did you read what it says? Did you read, make sure that, you, and I'm not saying this just to you, Brady. I'm saying this to the audience and to young writers, that you
Mhm.
got to be careful
Mhm.
because it's your work.
Yeah.
It's your work.
Yeah.
And you want to have the input in your work to say, look, wait a minute, how are we doing this? You want your
Mhm.
name to be on some of that stuff, even if you're not the one
Mhm.
creating it. You want your name to be on it. That
Right.
hey, he did get an eye on what we were doing. He did get an
Well,
If
eye
your
on
name is
this,
on
and
it, you
I.
want. And if your name is on it, you want it to be something that
You want it to be
people
yes,
you
feel
want to
yes.
do
That's
a
the big
reflection,
thing.
yeah.
name
And
on
I
it.
think,
Yeah,
yeah, Brady, I think you are ahead of the game in that because and I even think it
yes.
probably shows up in your writing because you do have the the media background and all of that. And I would
And you kind of know.
imagine that's why it looks
Hmm.
the way it does, and you've received those comments that we could see this as a movie, and
Right.
you if when it does go into that manifestation, you already know what it looks like, right? So you have that knowledge of
Hmm.
what it would look like on screen, as opposed to a complete novice or someone that didn't take the time to be well versed in all the things. And like you said, you're not going to direct it. You're not going to star in it, so you know your lane, but you know inherently what it should look like and whether it is true to you or not in that. So I do commend you for having that depth that we've talked about this on other shows about the talent being the talent, but there's a
Hmm.
business behind the talent, and most people just take the talent. It's like, nope, I'm the talent, but really the responsibility is to make sure that you understand the business behind your talent.
Hmm. Yeah. Now, what about I know you said you went to different events and I saw it was funny. I saw on one of your pages where you went to the event in Charlotte.
Yeah, we just had an event Juneteenth weekend. So
Oh, okay. Okay. I went to that event last year. I
Mhm.
went to
okay,
Charlotte last year for that same event. I
yeah,
missed the
the
cutoff.
African American Book Festival. It was
Right. I missed the cutoff
a great
this year,
event.
but I went to that event last year.
Mhm.
And I know going to events is like total chaos.
Mhm.
It's like, okay, you got to get up early, you got to pack the
Mhm.
books, you got to get there, you got to set up, you got to do this, you got to do that, and then put on a smile after you've done 2 hours of work ahead of time. So you got to be prepared for those that come.
Mhm.
But when you go to these events and you go to these things, your presentation, and I just want to speak a little bit about presentation. You said, you have people that approach you, you have people that come to you and they want to know, what you've done and everything else, and you're signing your books and everything. Do you go back and you don't think about redoing the book because the book is the same? But do you go back and think about the way you present yourself at these presentations?
Um, I've been doing them for a couple of years now, so
Hmm.
you learn with each one, and the best part of these events is you get to network with other
Well,
authors.
could you say that whole line again, please, sir? Just go
The
back
best
to
part is
you
networking.
learn what, sir? Could you just go back and say that over for the people in the back?
All the way
Could
in the
you
back.
Yeah,
Way
all the
back
way in
there.
the back.
Way
You
The
back
learn
ones
every
that
time you learn with
you
each go,
learn with each.
and
Now, do you learn something different, sir?
there.
absolutely.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
you also
Absolutely.
have to have a great team behind you. And I've been blessed to have a dad who is just always ready to do whatever. I call him up and
Nice.
say, "Hey, we're going here." He's like, "Okay, let me know when you want me there, and let me know what to bring." And
Hmm.
before we had kids, my wife was my wing person as well, and
Mhm.
she is also an amazing help. And because I've been able to do these events for so long, I kind of know what to look for. I kind of
Hmm.
know, how to present myself. If it's a kids event, predominantly children there, or
Hmm.
an event that's going to be an
So
older
you're
crowd.
telling me that some events are different
Then
in
the other. That's
presentation.
looking better. Mhm.
That's what you're telling me? That
Absolutely.
sometimes you have to present yourself differently
Yep.
depending on your audience.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And sir, how do you know what your audience is going to be at these events?
Mhm. Mhm.
We just researched the event.
Did you
Woo!
say that word? Oh, please, please, please. Could you just say that
From his young
again?
tender mind, he said, "What?"
You're always going to research the event, and
Always
Very
research
good.
your event.
Very good.
Thank you.
that's also going to allow you to kind of taper your expectations. If I'm making a young adult sci-fi book and I'm going to a festival for romance novels, I might not, I might not might not have the foot traffic as usual, but it doesn't mean I
That's right.
can't
Now,
network
what do
with
you
other
now?
authors.
Now that was something that I had to change. I was a speaker at the one year before last, and I
Mhm.
had to change parts of my speaking, and that's why I said it the way I said it.
Mhm,
I had to
mhm,
change parts of my speaking because there were a good portion of new authors that had one book or two books, and at a certain time they decided that they had not sold many books. So they started packing up. The event wasn't over.
I've
Yeah,
seen
you're
that
laughing,
on
Brady, but
numerous
it's
occasions.
the truth. You've
I've seen it
seen it.
on
Yeah,
numerous occasions.
And
you've
he's
seen it.
laughing because he knows better,
He
right?
knows better. So why is it important to you?
Mhm,
And like you said, you've written in your books and you've been pushing your books and everything. Every event does not guarantee you top-notch sales. Every
Mhm.
event does not mean that you're going to sell all the books on your table.
right.
So, what do you do when you have that type of event?
Well, for me, I don't necessarily think of the event as there to sell. I'm there to get my book out there. And so even if someone comes by and all they do is grab a business card and they listen to what the book is about, they might tell their friend who might be more
That's right.
interested, or their child, their son or daughter, if they're into science fiction and they're trying to get them into reading at a young age. You never know who might share your book down the line. And I've had people come up and they've said, hey, I think I saw your book somewhere and someone told me about it, and then they're interested because of that. So
Yeah.
if they're coming to talk to me in any way, shape, or form, it's a good event. And so it's not
Mhm.
necessarily about the sales you get that day. It's about being able to get people to connect to, and also being able to learn from other authors and network with other authors. Because I've had at least 3 or 4 events that I've learned about and been a part of because another author shared that event with me.
Mhm.
So you're always going to have something at these events that are going to make them worthwhile.
Yeah. Now,
Right.
I commend you once again on that mindset. Because I can't. I know I harp on this enough or too much, not enough. About the difference between a relationship and a transaction. And when you're just like trying to push your book and put it in the hands of, that's transactional. You all you care about is that you monetized your work. All you care about, right? When you're just like, oh, buy my, I didn't, this wasn't a good event because in my mind I was going to sell out my 500 book
Mhm.
inventory, and I don't care who gets it, just buy it, right? You
Mhm.
know, um, but and the other thing is presence is everything. You even though you wrote the book and the book stands on its own, but your presence in your book's presence is everything.
Mhm.
That's how people understand or connect to either the story and or you, is that your presence is there and not just ah, you know again, transaction, buy my book. Don't care who you buying it for, care if you're a fan or not, just buy the book.
Just buy the book. Just buy the
Yeah,
book.
just buy the
And I
book.
and I think that that's important. What we do here on this show, I've been asked 1,001 times. Well, why don't you do this with it, and why don't you do that with it? And I'm trying to explain to people that there's not enough avenues for people to come in and tell of their journey. There's enough avenues where we can put our book up and just say it's for sale. There's enough avenues where we could just say, hey, buy this or buy that. We have our own networking way of doing that. We have websites, we have our own social media pages and everything else. And not to say that we're not going to try to say, hey, you ought to go check out his book or you ought to go check out this. But I think it's also important for people to know here's an author that started out as this,
Mhm.
or here's a person that started out here. and they found out they needed to redirect or they needed to change certain things. So that's the purpose of this show, is to give people an open eye. So here we have a younger author saying the same thing as the older authors.
Mhm.
He's telling you the same thing. You got to do your research. You got to
Yeah.
find out where you're going. You got to find out
Mhm.
how these people handle what they handle. And by all means, don't shun anybody. But the
Mhm.
thing about it is, you also don't want to shun yourself. And
Right.
that was one of the things that I highlighted at that event was,
Mhm.
you keep going to these events and packing up early. Who's going to invite you back?
Right.
You
Well, I
you
also I never understood the point of packing up early. Where are you going? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, if it,
And
you're
knowing your book and knowing your product, you know how to connect with, if it's not like your target audience, you still should know how to connect with people,
right.
right?
exactly.
Yeah, as you gave the example of the romance, theme of whichever book fair you were at, you should know instinctively, um, a romance take on your book, if there is such
Right.
a thing, right?
Exactly.
You should know
Hmm.
that. So therefore, as Nanette was saying, she had to change her wording when she was giving a presentation to fit the audience. So if you are really connected with your work, you should be able to make
Exactly.
a
Right.
And
connection.
see
But
my
that's where your
speaking.
presence comes in, though.
Yeah, and see, my speaking was not to present my work. It
Mm-hmm.
was to introduce the importance of having a festival.
Right.
Mm.
What's the
Mm-hmm.
importance of having this festival? Which means
Mm-hmm.
I'm introducing everybody's work.
Yeah.
I'm talking about everything that's available there, from
Sure.
kids' books to, self-help to
Right.
documentaries to whatever's there. But if
Mm-hmm.
you leave with your one book,
Mm-hmm.
you may be the only author that is expressing that genre
Hmm.
Sure.
in a way that a child could
Mhm,
understand, an adult can
mhm,
understand,
mhm,
maybe a sci-fi fan
mhm,
Right.
who has read all the other books. And
mhm,
here you come with a brand new book, but you packing up.
mhm.
You're
Right.
not giving yourself enough room to be
Mhm,
presented.
mhm,
So I had to change a little part of my thing, telling them, listen, at one time I had one book.
mhm,
But I made sure I had one book and a whole lot of different things that
mhm.
fit into, if someone approached, like you said, someone approaches your table, you got a whole spiel to put out. Hey, how
Yeah.
you doing? Hey, what's going on? Hey,
Mhm.
what type of books do you read?
Right.
There's a whole process to it in your presentation that does not even include your book.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Because again, people when they approach you, they're interested. Something has piqued their interest, but I think it's such a disservice and disrespectful if, when they come to you, all you can talk about is your book for them. Who are you? Can I get your name? Can I,
Yeah, can I get your
what
name
are you
first? You
interested
know,
in? It might not be that they're there for themselves. It might be, for
there for
their mother,
somebody else.
their child, or
Exactly.
whatever. So, again, get off my soapbox. Um,
Now, when we talk about clairvoyance, because that's the theme of your book, when you talk about clairvoyance, even though it's sci-fi, and even though it's that stuff, you didn't talk about werewolves, you didn't talk about vampires, you didn't talk about, you specifically said, when I pick up your book, I'm looking at clairvoyance. I'm like, well, it doesn't matter who, if it's a wolf or if it's a bird or if it's a chicken, whatever it is, it's got this power. So what made you pick that particular power as opposed to, extra human strength and all of the other things that sometimes the sci-fis have? Why clairvoyance?
So it actually stemmed from the X-Men comics. And I was always a big fan of X-Men growing up, and I love the civil rights allegory to it. And the specific powers that I always was most excited about in X-Men were the characters who could do things with their mind. And
Mm,
mhm,
there was a specific character who could do all these different things,
mhm,
Jean Grey, who could, see the future and move things with her mind and read minds and do all these different things. And I
mhm,
just thought maybe it would be really cool to just take that character and just split her powers up into different into different characters.
mhm,
mhm,
And it was just really fun to explore the different avenues that that comes with. Because when you think about
Mhm.
reading minds, you don't think about the details that come with reading minds. Can you
Mhm.
read, can you read their current thoughts?
Mhm.
Do you have to be a little bit stronger to go any deeper than that? With seeing the
Mhm.
future, if you can see the future, does that mean you can change it? And so
Mhm.
being able to kind of dive deeper into those powers. Oops, sorry about that.
Oh boy.
It
Oh
can be
boy.
superpowers.
Okay, that's your superpower. Okay.
Right,
Superpowers
that was
activated.
pretty ironic, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, being able to kind of dive deeper into these powers was kind of what made them uh, what I wanted to focus on, and then the
Mhm.
characters evolving the characters from that became really fun. So
Mm,
Mhm.
having
Mhm.
the ability to control other bodies. Well, if you can do
mhm.
that, what happens to your body?
Yeah.
And
Right.
if you're
Right.
controlling somebody else's mind, well, what happens to their mind? So I came
Yeah.
up with this idea that the longer you stay in someone else's mind, the longer
Mhm.
that
You
person's mind
lose.
can
Mhm.
can can start to slowly come back. And so I came up
Mhm.
with a character who was kind of stuck in the body of a cat because she never was able to figure out how to go back into her own body.
Oh
And
wow.
so being able to kind of just dive deeper into those powers really allowed me to create the story from that. And
Mhm.
Mhm.
the characters kind of evolved from just coming up with different scenarios for
Right.
people who might have those powers.
Now, let me ask you this, because I know it happens to me. I know it happens to other authors as well. Your characters talk to you.
Of course, of course. I've spent many a midnight
Yes.
talking to
Yes.
myself because
Yes.
when I was writing, I always specifically the dialogue, because anything that's not dialogue just kind of flows because you're just
Mhm.
writing
Mhm.
down, you're basically just typing what's already in your head. But when it comes to the dialogue, I always want to be able to know the dialogue before I'm even putting it
Mm-mm.
to paper. I
You
want
can
to be able
you
to
write down those pieces of that dialogue, and all of a sudden they say, that ain't what I said."
I want to be able to recite it like it's happening before me. So with,
Yes, yes.
with that,
And you know what? For a long time,
right.
I used to think for a long time that that was something wrong with me.
Mm,
Like, I'm going in writing, written, like you said, dialogue, and you're going in
yeah.
and writing the dialogue, and you go back and you look for the mistakes. You go back and look for a comma, you look for a question
Mhm.
mark or whatever. You're looking for the mistake, and you go back and in your mind says that's not what I wanted to say. And
Yeah.
I'm like, no, that's what I'm saying. No, that's not it. And I'm like, hold up, wait a minute. I got someone talking in
Mhm.
my mind, and then the other character comes in and says, well, if you say that, I'm going to say this, and whoa, wait, what is this? But I just wanted to know if it comes to you the same way, because it comes to many of us that way. It comes
Mhm.
to many of
Yeah,
us
I
that
mean it's part of just having an imagination.
having that imagination and having
And
having that scenario in front of you and
it would
having
be
those.
it would be
Mhm.
strange if somebody walked in on me, but I don't think it's strange to do it. You know,
Exactly.
I
It's
was
not
gonna
strange to
say,
me.
so if I write it down, then I'm okay to have those.
because you have to do more than just write it down. You kind of, because dialogue isn't just words on a page. It's an
It's a back
interaction,
and forth.
conversation,
Yeah.
It's
and
a conversation back
you
and
have to
forth.
be able to kind of fill out, how that
That
energy
person's
flows
going to
between the
feel the
characters.
reaction. Yes, yes.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
not only that, when I was younger, I used to I wrote poetry, but and I still do, and it still happens. I can't memorize it. For some reason, I can memorize different things, but I can't memorize poems. I don't
Mm,
memorize them. So I have to write them as they are. And then I found out later on the reason for that was that I'll go and change it. My
mm,
feelings today about a certain thing is not the same feelings I had years ago about that thing.
mhm. Yeah.
So I can see where my evolution and my growth has been
Right.
as far as my
Mhm.
poetry is concerned. But when it
Mhm.
comes to the book, it's like I automatically don't have too much of a say so. Once the book is done, it's like that's the way I want it to be done.
Mhm.
And I don't think it's just me. I think it's
Mhm.
somebody in, there's folks that are going, yeah, we like that. So I just wanted to know, especially when you're dealing with those clairvoyant things and the trilogies and all of that
Mhm.
other stuff. There's some things that, may be talking
Mhm.
to you late at night, maybe saying stuff to you, you know. So, do you see yourself writing in another genre?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've always kind of wanted to touch other genres. One of the reasons I only wanted clairvoyance to be a trilogy was because I wanted to be able to branch out and do other projects. Science fiction and kind of fantasy will always be my first love because that's what I grew up loving. But
Right.
I also have ideas for a western. I
Mm,
also have ideas for kind of a period thriller.
Mhm.
So I want to be able to touch a lot of different avenues. I don't want to just write, young adult novels. I want to be able to write, things for people that might be older. As I might, my wife would probably love it if I wrote a children's book. um,
Yeah.
but
mhm,
Mhm.
I definitely want to be able to branch out and touch a lot of different things because I love a lot of different genres, and no one is into just one genre, no matter how much they tell you they are. People
and
are
they try to pin us into one.
yes,
They try to
absolutely.
make sure that you're this type author, and I
Yeah.
think that just makes it easier for them to follow.
Yeah.
If you're this type author, because they
Well, I think it's
make.
just going the safe route. It's easy to
Mhm.
write things that
Mhm.
you get the
Sure.
that you think a lot of people enjoy because it's been successful. But
Right.
some of
Right.
the most successful things
Mhm.
the people who took a chance on doing something a little out of the box.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I think that's what we're learning now with this influx
Mhm.
of black creatives doing science fiction and fantasy
Mhm.
and things like that. We're
Mhm.
learning that there's a lot of financial success in tapping into
Mhm.
these avenues that we have never seen um, people enter when it comes to black spaces. And I think one of the greatest things about kind of where we are right now and this
Mhm.
influx of black fantasy authors and black directors and things like that is I think now we've never more so than ever we have the opportunity to kind of take chances. And
Mhm.
I think that's
Mhm.
one of the most fun things about being an author is
Mhm.
being able to kind of reinvent, you know,
Right. Right.
because like I said, clairvoyance, the powers themselves, I didn't create. I'm not the first person to come up with psychic powers, but
Yeah.
my take on them is different from other
Right.
people. And so
Yeah.
being able to put your own spin on things and take an idea that's already there and
Mhm.
make it your own, I think this is the best time more than any in the past to be able to
Mhm.
do that.
To take that chance, yeah, because otherwise, like I said, when I started out, you could get thrown clean to the wall. Like, are you kidding me? No, we're not writing about that. Or,
Mhm.
it's taboo. You don't want to
Mhm.
write about certain things. So
Mhm.
I understand totally what you're saying about taking the chance now. Kind of says, "Hey, what does the water feel like? Can I swim in this water for a minute? And if I can swim in this water for a minute, I might be able to go distance. I might be able to take it on a cruise. I might be able to go up the shore
Mhm.
some with what I got." So you're
Mhm.
absolutely right that taking that opportunity to venture into other things and children writings and comics and fantasy and everything else. I think I would scare myself though if I wrote it, wrote certain things. And I say that because I love a good book that is not the norm.
Mhm.
I don't want to read the normal Frankenstein stuff.
Mhm.
I don't want to read that normal stuff. I want to
Mhm.
read something that's
And the best
intriguing.
books really make you feel like you're kind of in that environment.
Yeah, I want to feel the realism in it. Like when you said, the person gets stuck in a cat. There are some animals that I actually think are people that are stuck because the animal the animal doesn't act like an animal. You know,
Mhm.
there's some people that some things that you look at and go, you've been here before, and I don't know, you're a pet, okay, but you've
Mhm.
been but you've been here
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
So I could kind of see things that I could see as a reality
Mhm.
that intrigues me. If I
Mhm.
could pick it up and see the reality in it. I don't want a fairy tale, I don't want that. I want something that I could look at and really discover
Mhm.
a new type of
Mhm.
reading, a new type of you know
Mhm.
take me away,
Mhm.
one of those things. So
So,
you did have two things that you said that I thought were very intriguing.
mhm.
Fear is self-inflicted wound before you've even started the fight.
Yeah.
Now, Felice always says the thing with, Mike Tyson saying you don't know you're in a fight until you've been hit. So I'm wondering if some of us are inflicting our own wounds.
Woo, with me some.
I'm wondering
A lot.
right. I'm wondering in life, how do we know that our fear is fear and not rejection? A lot of times we
Mm,
yell the word rejection. We yell the word, hey, I can't. We yell
mm,
the word, they didn't give me the opportunity. We yell the words that are actually self-inflicted wounds, and those
mm,
wounds are fears. But I'd like to know your take on this statement that you.
Yeah, so this is a quote from the book. Is actually the main character Ryan is being trained on how to use his powers by another person who is a clairvoyant, and he's basically trying in the part of the book he's trying to lift a really heavy object, and he's afraid of what will happen if he lifts it and fails, or and things come crashing down, or he overexerts his power and he hurts himself. And the person training him, the character who's one of my favorite characters in the book, his name is Aries. He tells him, fear is a self-inflicted wound before you've even started the fight, which basically means if you are already doubting yourself, you've already done more than failure could, because
mm. Wow.
you can't be your best self if you're already doubting yourself. And
Wow.
really with that phrase, I was kind of talking to myself when I'm writing the book, because this aspect of trying to get published and trying to create this thing, if you already have put yourself in a box and don't think you can succeed, then you won't.
Yeah.
And for me, especially becoming an author and public speaking and doing interviews and things like that, I've always been a very introverted person. There's a lot of myself in the main character Ryan,
Mhm,
but being able to just put that first foot forward and not
mhm.
let my own self doubt hinder me allows
Yeah.
me to be more successful. And so
Mhm.
I think that's what, especially when it comes to going after something and taking risks and trying to expand your horizons, you have to be able to get out of your own way if you really want to reach the heights that you're capable of.
Yeah. That's
Mhm.
awesome.
Mhm.
I love that. I love that. So
Mhm.
you mentioned that you have children. So um, I'm assuming they're too young to be in the, space where they've read your book, or, but how are you encouraging them maybe to, express themselves in writing or storytelling or anything like that? Or are you?
So my son is 4 and my daughter is 18 months. So
Oh
they're
wow.
they're
Good.
not old enough to read clairvoyance, but they absolutely love to read. They absolutely love to read. It's like they're one of their favorite things to do.
Mhm.
And we started them off at a very young age when it comes to reading. And
Mhm.
it's something we do every night before we go to bed. We
Yeah.
always let them pick out 2 or 3 books. We
Mhm.
take them to the public library and let them pick out new books. And so it's something that we've really been intentional about fostering,
Yeah.
Mhm.
because I didn't know I loved to read until I got older. And it wasn't because I wasn't exposed to books, because you're exposed to books in elementary school all the time.
Yeah.
But I wasn't exposed to the books I liked.
Mhm.
And I think we push kids towards reading in general, but we don't foster what they love to read.
Okay.
And
Love
so
to
one of
read.
Mhm.
the things that I love that my wife does is when she takes them to the library, she lets them pick out books that
Pick
they
out the book.
Yeah.
Right.
and
Right.
so and it's not just picture books or books that have a sound that makes a noise.
Yeah.
It's a lot of, they might love the cover of it because it's got animals up on it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
My son loved this book with trucks because he's really into monster trucks. And so
Mhm.
being able to kind of foster that love for reading is how you get them to the point where once they're able to read, the 300-page books, they choose to do it and they don't feel intimidated by it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's the big thing, because when I was getting older, it was like, oh, that's too many pages. I don't want to read
Yeah.
it. But for me, once I get a good book, like
Right.
I can't put it down.
I
And
know
Right.
you're mad at the end, even
yeah,
if it's 400
Right.
pages. You're
Right.
mad. You're
Right.
like, oh, don't it?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Then you had a second quote that said life is 10% of what happens to you and 90% of how you react to it. I know we've heard this quote before.
Mhm.
This is not a quote that is unknown. But what does it mean to you?
Well, my mentor in college really kind of hammered that quote into my head, and it's one that I still live by to this day, almost every day. Especially having a lot of time working in customer service, it's easy to kind of match the energy around you, and
Mm-hmm.
if you are constantly in situations that are adverse situations where it's easy to get angry, you're not going to be better off if you go to the level of the energy around you.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes if you can keep a cool head, it
Mhm.
makes it makes your life better.
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
you're always going to go through challenges. There's no such
Mhm.
thing, no matter how much money you have, no matter how well you are off, you're always going to go through challenges. There's no such thing as
Mm-hmm.
not having challenges. And so the the people who are happiest in life are the people who don't let their challenges become who they are. And the
Right.
people who are able to take on those challenges and say,
Mhm.
okay, no matter what you throw at me, I'm going to react the way I want to react
Yeah.
because I'm in control. I'm in control of my emotions. I'm in control of
Mhm.
what my future is. And so that quote always stuck out to me because I think it's just a great approach to just taking on challenges, to
Mhm.
just
Mm-hmm.
say, okay, all right, no matter what is thrown my way, I am the person who has the control
Control.
over
Yeah.
what I do from here.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So our platform is usually an informative platform, and it's also an inviting platform. So we love the fact that you accepted the invitation to be here. But Felice has a question for you.
Yes. So my question is, Mr. Brady, first of all, thank you for, you living out your gifts and sharing your gifts with the world. I did have a quick question though. So
Mhm.
are you full-time author, or do you have a dual
I,
personality
I
there?
do have I do have a full time job
Mhm.
and basically two full time jobs because
Yeah.
I'm an author too, and
Yeah.
I also that would that comes with doing your own marketing sometimes
Right.
and managing
Mm-hmm.
your social media. There's like
Keeping
a
it
thousand
busy.
social media pages now, so you got
Yeah.
to be able to manage your Facebook, your Twitter, your TikTok, your Instagram, and
Mhm.
also scheduling events and doing all those things.
Mhm.
But I have a family, so I have to support my family, but I also still want to pursue a passion. So you gotta have to be able to be a jack of all trades, and
Mhm.
you gotta find ways to manage your time because
Absolutely.
that's
So,
kind of
which it brings me to the real question of, with all you have going, the family, the authorship, and a job, a whole 9 to 5. So, what do you do to fill your cup? How do you manage all of those things, but then manage to fill your cup and keep your cup full?
that's the constant challenge, right?
Yeah.
I think the number one thing that I find is just little small moments of decompression.
Hmm.
Um, I like to watch movies. I'm a big fan of watching movies. I've seen 1,000 times, and I'll put on a movie and watch like an hour of it, and I'm like, okay, that's my favorite part.
Yeah.
I've kind of come down now, or just playing a video game for a little bit, or
Hmm.
just spending time with my wife or friends. So you just have to really just find times, little time periods here and there to kind of just come down
Yeah.
from all that you have going on, and that's really important because you can't grind forward if you're constantly on the ground. You're gonna grind. You're gonna burn out.
Yes.
So just being able to find little ways to recharge is really important.
Mhm. Awesome. Well, that's my question, and I think that is so important for our life. That balance of giving, giving, giving. You got this big gift, you got this big talent, and then that's all you need. All you know to do with it is to give it out. But again, you know, much like you're giving out your talent to the world, something needs to be given to you to keep you to the point of being able to continue to give. So
Exactly,
I
exactly.
appreciate
So
that.
how would people get in touch with you, Mr. Brady?
Well, you can always follow me on social media. Instagram, I'm Be More the Auteur. That's spelled like auteur, not author. And then
I
on
love
Wait,
Facebook,
it.
wait. Be more
Be More
the
the Auteur.
auteur.
So AUTEUR.
A
And I've
U.
always loved that term because if people are unaware, an auteur is a filmmaker who has a very distinctive style. Um,
Okay.
so
I
Spike Lee is
love
always a
that.
great example. Spike Lee
So
always
is
does
No,
that zoom shot.
AE, isn't it AEU? So
T-E-U-R. A-U-T-E-U-R.
A U T E
A
U R.
E A E.
Oh,
It's
A
in
E.
E.
Okay.
A-U.
Let's
Oh, okay.
A-U-T-E-U-R.
say it again. Mm,
A-U-T-E-U-R.
I had it right. Okay. Okay. All right.
It's the
We want to make sure
yeah.
that
Sorry about
what happened?
that. You kept
And you
saying
can
A
always go to my
E.
website as well. It's authorbmore.com, and all my social medias are on there. And that's a great way to keep in touch with me and figure out what my next project is. It always has my next events on there. Um, I got a couple events coming up this year, so people in North Carolina, if you want to catch me, I'll be around. And authorbmore.com is always a great way to kind of know what I'm doing next.
Mm-hmm. So we want to make sure that everybody knows that you're available. To for events, you're available. Your books are available, and you are one of the sci-fi. We got two now in the sci-fi club because we don't have many sci-fi authors, so we
Yeah,
have two now in the sci-fi club.
look
But we
at it.
want to make sure that everybody knows to get in touch with you through social media. And he is in our July issue of IPIM magazine, so please follow him and find out what
Mhm.
his next is, because that's what we are going to do. We're going to make sure that we know that what he's doing this year is nowhere near what he'll be doing next year. It'll be an
Yeah.
entirely different evolution, and we're proud to present him
Mhm.
as he rises through his journey as he goes through. So I want to thank our audience tonight for being here with us and being a part of IPIM magazine, and I want to thank you, Brady, for being a part of
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
it. And I appreciate you and all you do. So thank you very much. Thank you. And
Mhm.
good night, everyone. Have
Good
a good
night,
evening.
everyone. Thanks for joining us. Awesome.
Great
Yes,
show. Great
yes.
show. Thank you so much.